Have you ever felt like you're holding on too tightly, gripping life so hard that peace slips through your fingers? What if the secret to serenity isn't found in controlling everything, but in gently letting go? In this video, we'll uncover timeless Buddhist wisdom that helps you release what no longer serves you and welcome what truly matters. Through powerful stories and gentle guidance, we'll explore how to find calm in a chaotic world. If you've been searching for peace, perhaps it's not far away. It's already within you, waiting to be remembered. Let's begin this journey together. Once, a monk was gifted a delicate porcelain cup by his master. He cherished it deeply, admired its beauty, handled it with care, kept it close wherever he went. One day, the cup slipped from his hands and shattered into 1,000 pieces. Grief rose in his chest, but his master, calm and serene, simply said, "That cup was already broken from the beginning." This story carries a profound truth. Detachment is not about indifference or coldness. It is about freedom. It is the understanding that everything we hold dear, people, objects, even experiences, is temporary. Buddhism teaches that the root of suffering is attachment. We cling, hoping to preserve what feels good and avoid what hurts. But life, like a river, is always moving. And no matter how tightly we grip the water, it slips through our fingers. Think of all the things we hold on to, relationships that no longer nourish us, dreams that no longer fit who we are, old memories that bring more pain than joy. We believe letting go means losing, but in reality, letting go is an act of love. It frees our heart to breathe again. It creates space for something new to enter. When we understand impermanence, not just with our minds, but in our hearts, we begin to live more lightly. The monk's cup was already broken, not because it had fallen, but because everything in this life is destined to change. Clinging only delays the inevitable and adds sorrow to the process. But when we embrace impermanence, we stop fearing change. We begin to trust the natural unfolding of life. Detachment also means loving without possession. You can deeply love someone and yet not chain them to your expectations. You can enjoy a moment without needing to make it last forever. This kind of love is pure. It's generous. It doesn't grasp, it gives. So ask yourself gently, what am I holding on to out of fear? What weight am I carrying that I no longer need? Letting go is not a loss, it's a return to peace. And in that space of surrender, you'll find something beautiful, not emptiness, but clarity, not loneliness, but freedom. True detachment doesn't harden the heart. It softens it, allowing us to live with grace, with openness, and with a deep, quiet joy that nothing outside of us can shake. One day, a disciple approached his master and said, "Master, I suffer because life is not the way I want it to be." The master smiled gently and replied, "You suffer because you resist what is. Life is not here to please you, it is here to teach you." This is the heart of radical acceptance. Acceptance in Buddhism is not the same as resignation. It's not about giving up or becoming passive. It's about seeing clearly, removing the filters of judgment, expectation, and illusion, and learning to meet life exactly as it is, not as we wish it to be. But why is this so difficult? Because the human mind is constantly writing stories of how things should be, how people should act, how our life should look. We fight reality with our expectations, and in that struggle, suffering arises. Imagine standing on a beach and watching a massive wave come toward you. You could try to stop it with your hands, curse its existence, or panic, but the wave will still come. Or you could dive into it, surrender to its power, and let it carry you. The wave doesn't disappear because we resist. It simply passes through us, with or without our permission. Acceptance doesn't mean we have to like everything that happens. Pain, loss, and difficulty are part of being alive. But resisting them only adds another layer of suffering. We say, "This shouldn't be happening," and we tighten. We say, "I can't accept this," and we close our hearts. But what if instead we said, "This is here. Now what can I learn from it?" There's a story of a master archer. He could aim with incredible precision, but even the best archer cannot control the wind, the movement of the target, or a sudden change in weather. He can get angry, blame the world, or he can adjust, adapt, and shoot again. In the same way, life asks us to stop trying to control the uncontrollable and start working with what is. Acceptance gives us back our power. It doesn't make us weak, it makes us wise. When we stop wasting energy resisting what already exists, we can begin to act with clarity and purpose. We stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and begin asking, "What is this teaching me?" That simple shift changes everything. It also invites us to turn inward, to embrace not just the world, but ourselves. Because often the person we struggle most to accept is the one we see in the mirror. Our past mistakes, our regrets, our flaws. But healing begins when we stop fighting ourselves. When we sit with our imperfections and say, "Even this I can hold with kindness." True acceptance doesn't dull our spirit. It deepens it. It doesn't mean we stop striving. It means we stop suffering in the process. It opens the door to change, not by force, but by presence. And from that presence, transformation becomes possible. So today, try asking yourself, what am I resisting? And then, gently, lovingly, see if you can soften around it. You may not change the situation, but you will change your relationship to it. And that often is enough to set you free. There's a quiet wisdom that lives in Buddhist stories, simple yet profound. These tales don't shout. They whisper truths that linger in the heart long after the story ends. One such story begins with a wild horse. An old monk lived peacefully in a remote village. One morning, a beautiful untamed horse wandered into his garden. The villagers exclaimed, "What great luck! A horse like this is a treasure." The monk, calm and unmoved, replied, "Luck or misfortune, who knows?" Days later, the monk's son tried to tame the horse but was thrown off and broke his leg. The villagers gasped, "What misfortune?" But again the monk said, "Luck or misfortune, who knows?" Weeks passed and war broke out. All the village's young men were drafted, except the monk's son, whose broken leg spared him. Once again, the villagers praised the monk's luck, and once again he simply said, "Luck or misfortune, who knows?" This story teaches us to loosen our grip on judgment. In our rush to label every event as good or bad, we often miss the deeper flow of life. What feels like a loss may later reveal itself as a blessing. What seems like a setback may be redirecting us towards something greater. Think of your own life. Has there ever been a time when something you thought was the end, a job loss, a breakup, a missed opportunity, later opened a new path you never imagined? In the moment, we feel fear and despair, but in time we often see that life was guiding us, that the universe was rearranging things, not to punish us, but to protect or prepare us. Buddhism invites us to trust this unfolding, not passively, but with an open heart. Trust doesn't mean we stop acting, it means we stop forcing. We do our part, but we let go of the need to control the outcome. It's like planting a seed. You water it, tend to it, but you cannot tug at it to make it grow faster. Growth takes its own time. Wisdom, too, blooms in its own season. Another Buddhist tale tells of a man walking through the forest who saw a butterfly struggling to emerge from its cocoon. With kind intentions, he gently opened the cocoon to help. But the butterfly, deprived of its struggle, emerged weak and unable to fly. What the man didn't know was that the effort to break free is what strengthens the butterfly's wings. How often do we do this in our own lives? Rushing through pain, trying to force clarity, or demanding answers before they are ready to come. But the struggle itself is part of the journey. It builds strength, resilience, and insight. Just like the butterfly, we grow not despite the struggle, but because of it. Trusting fate doesn't mean doing nothing. It means learning to work with life, not against it. Like a farmer who plants, waters, and then waits, knowing the sun will rise when it's time. There's no need to panic or pull at the roots. Life unfolds with its own intelligence. This mindset also teaches us patience. Many of us want immediate results. We want healing without sitting in discomfort. We want answers without asking the right questions. But wisdom isn't instant. It arises slowly, often in silence, often in hindsight. The river does not rush to its destination. It curves, it sways, it carves stone with persistence, and yet it never doubts its course. In the same way, we can learn to live with more grace. We can stop demanding certainty and start leaning into trust. And when we do, we begin to notice something extraordinary: peace. A quiet, steady peace that no longer depends on everything going our way. A peace that comes from knowing that even when we don't understand the why, we can still walk with faith. So the next time life surprises you, when something falls apart or doesn't go as planned, pause before judging. Ask yourself instead, what could this be making room for? You may not see it today, but someday you might look back and say, that moment changed everything. And when you trust in life like that, not with fear, but with curiosity, you begin to walk not just through life, but with life. That's when fate becomes not something to fear, but something to welcome. Because what is meant for you will always find its way, and what is not meant for you, no matter how tightly you cling, will always drift away. A disciple once came to his master, his eyes weary, his mind unsettled. "Master," he said, "my thoughts are like a storm. I cannot find peace." The master handed him a glass of water mixed with dirt and asked him to shake it. "Now wait," he said. As the disciple watched, the dirt slowly sank and the water became clear. "This," the master explained, "is your mind. When you allow it to settle, peace and clarity arise on their own." This is the essence of Buddhist meditation, not to escape life, but to become still enough to see it clearly. We live in a world that pulls us in every direction. Notifications buzz, schedules overflow, and worries fill the spaces in between. Most people think of meditation as a way to empty the mind, but that's a misunderstanding. Meditation isn't about forcing thoughts to disappear. It's about observing them without getting lost in them. It's learning to sit still while the mind dances, knowing that the dance will eventually slow. Meditation is a mirror. It shows us what's really going on inside. The anger we've buried, the sadness we ignore, the constant craving for control or distraction. And in that honest seeing, transformation begins. Because only when we're aware of what's there can we learn to hold it with compassion and let it go. One of the simplest forms of Buddhist meditation is breath meditation. You don't need anything fancy. Just find a quiet space, sit comfortably, close your eyes, and bring your attention to your breath. Notice the air as it moves in and out of your nose. Don't try to change it, just observe it. When your mind wanders, gently bring it back to the breath, again and again. This gentle return is the heart of the practice. Even 5 minutes a day can begin to shift the way you experience life. You may start to notice your reactions more clearly, how quickly you become frustrated, how easily you slip into worry. And over time, instead of reacting, you begin to respond. You breathe, you pause, you create space. There are other forms of meditation as well, each offering its own kind of healing. Gratitude meditation invites you to reflect on what you're thankful for, shifting your focus from what's missing to what's already present. Letting go meditation helps you release emotional burdens. You might visualize holding your worries in your hands and, with each breath, imagine them slowly dissolving into the wind. Another powerful practice is loving-kindness meditation, or metta bhavana. You repeat simple phrases like, "May I be well," "May I be at peace." Then, you extend these wishes to others, someone you love, someone neutral, even someone who has hurt you. It may feel awkward at first, especially when directed at yourself, but over time, it softens the heart. It teaches you to treat yourself with the same care you offer to others. Meditation also teaches us the most important truth in Buddhist thought: impermanence. As you sit, you see how thoughts rise and fall. Emotions pass through like clouds. Even pain, emotional or physical, has its own rhythm, its own cycle. And in this awareness, you realize that nothing lasts forever. Not the sorrow, not the fear, not even the joy. Everything flows. This realization is not meant to make you detached from life, but more present in it. When you understand impermanence, you begin to cherish each moment, knowing it's fleeting. You stop clinging, and you start witnessing. And that witnessing, that presence, is peace. So if your days feel heavy, if your mind feels crowded, give yourself a few moments of stillness. You don't need to fix anything. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to sit, breathe, and be with what is. And in that quiet space between breaths, you may find exactly what you've been searching for all along, a deep, steady calm that rises not from the outside world, but from within you. One day a master and his disciple stood by the edge of a flowing river. The master pointed and said, "Watch how the water moves. It doesn't resist, it doesn't fight the rocks or the bends. It simply flows, with grace, with trust." The disciple nodded, but deep inside, he still feared letting go. This fear is something many of us carry. We spend much of our lives trying to control what happens. Our relationships, our careers, our health, even how others perceive us. We cling to the belief that if we plan well enough, prepare deeply enough, and try hard enough, we can avoid pain and guarantee happiness. But life, like the river, is in constant motion. It changes, swerves, and surprises. And no matter how hard we try, we cannot control everything. We lose jobs, loved ones leave, plans fall apart, and the more we resist these shifts, the more we suffer. Buddhism teaches us something that may sound simple, but takes great courage to embody. True peace comes not from controlling life, but from flowing with it. There's a story of a man hanging onto a branch at the edge of a cliff. Below him was the unknown. Terrified, he refused to let go, even as his arms grew weary. What he didn't realize was that just beneath him was solid ground. If he had released his grip, he would have landed safely. But his fear held him captive. How many times do we do the same? We cling to relationships that no longer nourish us, jobs that drain our spirit, beliefs that no longer reflect who we've become. We hold on, not because it's good, but because it's familiar, because the unknown feels scarier than the pain we already know. Letting go is not weakness. It's not giving up. It is choosing to trust something greater than your current fear. It's understanding that you can do your best, but you cannot guarantee outcomes. That you can love someone, but you cannot make them stay. That you can care for your body, but you cannot stop the passage of time. This surrender doesn't mean passivity. In fact, it takes great strength. It means acting with full presence and releasing the results. Like an archer who focuses on form, breath, and aim, but once the arrow is released, lets it fly without obsession. So how do we begin to let go? First, we practice acceptance. Recognize what is within your control and what is not. Take action where you can, and release the rest. Not with bitterness, but with grace. Second, we invite curiosity instead of fear. When something doesn't go as planned, instead of spiraling into, "Why is this happening to me?" we ask, "What is life trying to teach me?" Sometimes what seems like a detour is actually the path. Third, we stop identifying so closely with outcomes. You are not your successes or your failures. You are not your plans. You are the awareness behind it all, the one who breathes, who watches, who learns. Meditation is a powerful companion in this process. Sitting in stillness allows us to see our fears without being ruled by them. It reminds us that thoughts are not facts, and that everything, yes, everything, passes. Another helpful practice is journaling. Ask yourself each morning, "What am I trying to control today?" And then write, gently and honestly. Awareness is the first step toward release. Letting go also means letting go of how we think we should be, of perfectionism, of needing to have it all figured out. Life isn't a straight road. It winds, it climbs, it dips, and yet somehow it always leads us to where we're meant to be. When we finally allow ourselves to flow with life rather than against it, something beautiful happens. We begin to breathe easier. We start to feel lighter. We open ourselves to surprises. to joy, to miracles we never saw coming. And most importantly, we develop compassion, not just for others, but for ourselves. Because letting go isn't only about releasing things or people, it's about releasing judgment. Releasing the voice that says you're not doing enough, not moving fast enough, not getting it right. So today, pause. Close your eyes, breathe in, breathe out, and ask yourself gently, where am I holding too tightly? What can I release? You might find that life, just like the river, has been waiting all along to carry you forward. All you have to do is let go. A monk once walked along a quiet path and came upon a man sitting beneath a tree, his face buried in his hands, tears falling into the dust. "Master," the man said, "I've made so many mistakes. I've hurt people I love. I can't forgive myself." The monk placed a hand on his shoulder and replied softly, "If a bird were to break its own wing for flying the wrong direction, how could it ever soar again? Guilt is the stone that stops us from moving forward. Compassion is the wind that helps us rise." In Buddhism, compassion, karuna, is not merely about being kind to others. It's about turning that same kindness inward. Too often, we are our own harshest critics. We speak to ourselves in ways we would never speak to a friend. We carry shame like heavy stones in a bag, dragging it through life as though punishing ourselves might somehow make us whole again. But it doesn't. Self-judgment doesn't heal. It only deepens the wound. Compassion, on the other hand, is a gentle invitation to see ourselves as human, flawed, yes, but always learning, always capable of change. It doesn't mean excusing harmful behavior. It means recognizing that we are all doing our best from the level of awareness we have at any given moment. There's a Buddhist practice called metta bhavana, the meditation of loving kindness. It begins simply by repeating phrases like, "May I be well, may I be happy, may I live in peace." At first, for many, this feels awkward, even undeserved. But with time, these words begin to soften the walls we've built within. Once we can offer these wishes to ourselves, we extend them to others, loved ones, acquaintances, and eventually, even those who have caused us pain. Not because they necessarily deserve it, but because we deserve peace. There is another story of a man carrying a large sack of stones on his back. He's weary, staggering, barely able to take another step. A monk passes by and asks, "Why do you carry this burden?" The man replies, "These are my grudges and regrets. I cannot let them go." The monk answers, "But you do not need them to continue your journey." How many of us carry that same sack, holding on to anger, resentment, or guilt as though they are part of who we are? But they are not. They are experiences, real, yes, but they are not our essence. Letting go of them is not forgetting. It's freeing ourselves to move forward. And that includes forgiveness, not just toward others, but toward ourselves. Forgiveness doesn't say what I did was okay. It says, I am willing to begin again. It says, I am no longer defined by my lowest moment. This same compassion extends to others when we recognize that every person we meet is carrying their own invisible weight. A sharp word might mask a deep sadness. A cold silence may hide an old wound. When we meet others with compassion, we break the cycle of reaction. We respond with understanding instead of anger. We give space instead of judgment. But compassion also has boundaries. It is not weakness. It doesn't mean tolerating abuse or accepting harmful behavior. It means choosing not to carry hate, even when we walk away. It means protecting our peace while still holding others in gentle awareness. To live with compassion is to soften, not just to the world, but to ourselves. It's choosing kindness over criticism, patience over pressure, love over fear. So, ask yourself today, what pain am I holding on to that no longer needs to define me? What part of me is still waiting for forgiveness, for understanding, for grace? Start there. Offer yourself one small act of compassion. It might be a deep breath, a gentle word, a moment of rest without guilt. And from there, let it ripple outward. Because when we learn to be tender with ourselves, we unlock the deepest well of love. And from that well, we can nourish the world, not with judgment or control, but with presence, empathy, and peace. That is the power of compassion. It doesn't just heal wounds, it transforms the way we live. A disciple once asked his master, "How long will it take me to reach enlightenment?" The master smiled and replied, "If you rush, it will take longer. But if you walk patiently, it may come sooner than you think." This story carries a truth many overlook. Spiritual wisdom is not found in grand revelations, but in how we live, moment by moment, breath by breath. Buddhism is not a concept to admire from afar. It is a practice to live, to embody, and to return to every single day. So how do we take these timeless teachings on detachment, acceptance, trust, meditation, and compassion and weave them into our daily lives? How do we walk this path not as monks in distant monasteries, but as ordinary people with families, responsibilities, and busy minds? The first step is practicing gentle detachment. This doesn't mean abandoning everything you care about. It means learning to hold life lightly. When something brings joy, embrace it, but don't clutch it in fear. When something changes or ends, allow the sadness, but don't let it chain you. Ask yourself, am I holding on out of love or out of fear? That question alone can guide you toward greater peace. Second, we cultivate radical acceptance. Life will not always match our expectations. People will change, plans will unravel, the body will age, and still we can meet these truths without bitterness. Each morning, try asking yourself, what can I accept today? It might be a difficult situation at work, a disagreement with a loved one, or an imperfection within yourself. Acceptance does not mean approval, it means clarity. And with clarity comes wise action. The third teaching to integrate is trust in life's timing. Like the story of the monk and the wild horse, we often don't see the full picture of what's unfolding. Something may feel like a loss today, but turn out to be a blessing tomorrow. Rather than labeling events as good or bad, ask instead, what might this be teaching me? That one shift can turn chaos into insight and pain into purpose. Fourth, make meditation a daily habit, even if it's just 5 minutes. Sit quietly, breathe, and observe. Don't worry about doing it right. Just show up. Over time, this stillness will become a sanctuary, a place to return to whenever the world feels overwhelming. It's not about emptying the mind, but about building a new relationship with it. One where you watch your thoughts, rather than being swept away by them. Fifth, let go of control. Do your best, but don't obsess over outcomes. Life isn't a formula, it's a river. You can shape your actions, but you can't shape every result. So act with integrity, and then release. Trust that the current knows where to take you. When things don't go your way, instead of spiraling, ask, how can I flow with this? And finally, embody compassion in everything you do. Not just the big gestures, but the small ones. A kind word to a stranger, a moment of patience with a loved one, a soft whisper of forgiveness to yourself. Speak to yourself as you would to a dear friend, with encouragement, with care, with gentleness. And when someone hurts you, remember that compassion doesn't mean letting them hurt you again. It means choosing peace over poison, release over resentment. The truth is, this path isn't about perfection. Some days you'll forget to breathe. You'll react from fear. You'll hold on too tightly. That's okay. Just come back. The power of Buddhism lies not in never falling, but in returning, again and again, to the present moment. Because real transformation happens in the small choices, in how we respond to a difficult morning, in how we treat ourselves when we're tired or disappointed, in how we choose presence over distraction, kindness over anger, surrender over control. So today, begin simply. Light a candle before breakfast. Breathe deeply before speaking. Look someone in the eyes with full attention. Forgive yourself a little more than you did yesterday. This is how Buddhism lives. Not just in temples, but in your kitchen, your commute, your quiet moments. It lives in how you rise each morning and how you lay your head down at night. And with each small act of mindfulness, You are walking the path, step by step, breath by breath, becoming not someone new, but someone more whole, more awake, and more at peace. If this message touched your heart or brought you a moment of peace, don't keep it to yourself. Click like to support more content like this, subscribe to join our growing community of mindful souls, and share this video with someone who may need a little light today. Your presence here matters, and every small act of kindness spreads more peace in the world. Thank you for walking this path with us.